everyone, so today we're going to be looking at osmoregulation, and so this is your body's way of regulating water and maintaining water balance. So I want you to think back to when we learnt about osmosis and the movement of water and how water moves from an area of low solute concentration to an area of high solute concentration. And this is going to be important in how our bodies maintain homeostasis in terms of water balance. So I just want to go over some terms before we get started, particularly osmolality, and this is the total concentration of solute in 1 kilogram of solvent, and the solvent in this case is water. So osmoregulation is the homeostatic regulation of osmolality in the body via the alteration of water and solute balance. So your body is going to alter concentration of water or the concentration of solute to maintain a relatively stable osmolality. Osmolarity, which you might also hear, is very similar. It's the total concentration of solute in 1 litre of solvent. So osmolality, which is what Ed Roller uses, is this concentration of solute in 1 kilogram of solvent, whereas osmolarity is the concentration of solute in 1 litre of solvent. It's describing similar things but different units. So why is osmolality important? Well, our cells are surrounded by extracellular fluid, and this plays an important role in maintaining an internal or a stable internal environment. So we want to balance the amount of water in this extracellular fluid, and this helps prevent our cells from swelling or shrinking, because as we know from osmosis, water is going to move to an area of high solute concentration, and so we want to balance the amount of water that we have in this extracellular fluid to prevent the cells from shrinking or swelling. An example here is if we do not have enough water in our extracellular fluid, then there will be a high concentration of solute surrounding the cell. Therefore, water is going to move out of the cell via osmosis, and so this is our definition of osmosis, causing the cell to crenate, which is then to shrivel up like this. And we obviously don't want that to happen to our cells, because our cells have very important functions in keeping us alive. So again, we're going to look at osmolality and this regulation of water balance using a stimulus response model. So let's look at increased osmolality. This means there is a decrease in water or an increase in solute. So the stimulus is the change in osmolality. We have increase in concentration of solute at the extracellular fluid as a result of the decrease in the water of the body. So if we decrease the amount of water in the body, obviously that fluid is going to have a higher concentration because there's less water diluting it. So stimulus, increased osmolality, or decrease in water, you can say either. Our receptors, so our baroreceptors, detect a change in pressure, and our osmoreceptors detect changes in osmolality. They're going to pick up this change. Then they're going to send this information to 2 different types of modulators. One is the kidney and the other one is the hypothalamus. So we'll start with the kidney. The kidney is going to compare this level of osmolality to the normal range, and it's going to detect that there is increased osmolality above the normal range. So it's going to send a message to the effector. In one case, it's the kidney. This effector is then going to produce a response, and this response is the production of renin, which is an enzyme. So renin will then stimulate the adrenal gland, which is a gland that is on top of the kidneys, if you remember back to the endocrine system. And this adrenal gland is going to produce a hormone called aldosterone. So, to recap, kidney detects that a message is sent to the kidney, which is a modulator. It compares it to the normal range, sends a signal to itself to produce a response. An enzyme called renin is produced, which acts on the adrenal gland, which then produces aldosterone. Another way that the kidney can act as a modulator is that it sends a signal to cells in the distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. So think back to the structure of the nephron. And this the response that it produces is that aldosterone from over here stimulates the reabsorption of the sodium ions in the nephron. Right? If we think back to the nephron, and when we reabsorb those sodium ions, it's going to cause water to follow, and so we're going to reabsorb that water. Lastly, another modulator is the hypothalamus. So this is in the brain. It's going to send a message to the pituitary gland, also in the brain. This is one of our glands from the endocrine system. This pituitary gland is then going to produce antidiuretic hormone, so ADH, and ADH increases your thirst. It also increases aquaporins, which are channel proteins. And it's going to put more aquaporins in the nephron, and this helps us reabsorb more water, right? Because we have increased osmolality or decrease in water. So we want to do things to reabsorb water. And these are the ways that we can do that. So this is just a summary of this process of regulating water by increasing water absorption. It goes into a little bit more detail than you need to know, but essentially over here, this yellow cap on top of the kidney, that is your adrenal gland, and that's going to produce aldosterone, which is a hormone over here, which acts on the nephron, increasing the amount of water back into the bloodstream and therefore increasing the amount of water or decreasing osmolality, so decreasing the amount of the concentration of solute. This is another image that describes that process of increasing the amount of water reabsorption. In this case, we have ADH acting on receptors in the nephron or in the kidney and the nephron. This increases the amount of protein channels called aquaporins, and therefore allowing more water to travel through these aquaporins back into the bloodstream, and therefore increasing the amount of water in the bloodstream. So this is our stimulus response model in the form of a negative feedback loop. I'm not going to go over everything. This is what I've been through. If this diagram helps you a little bit more than the other tables in the earlier slides, feel free to use this diagram instead, but it's the same information describing how the stimulus of decrease in water levels will then produce a response to reabsorb more water and therefore increase water levels. So let's look at the opposite example now. So a decrease in osmolality or an increase in water. So this means that there is a decrease in the concentration of solute in that extracellular fluid because we have an increase in water. So there's more water in our blood, and that is diluting our blood, and there's essentially lowering the concentration of that solute. So again, our receptors, our baroreceptors and our osmoreceptors pick this up, and they send this signal to the modulator, which in this case is the hypothalamus in the brain. The hypothalamus is going to send a signal to the pituitary gland, which then produces a response suppressing the release of ADH, so this antidiuretic hormone. So suppress means to prevent or stop. And this decreases thirst and decreases the amount of aquaporins in the nephron, so less water is reabsorbed, right? Because we already have a lot of water. We don't need to keep hold of that water. This is a diagram that shows this. Again, so we are suppressing, or your body is suppressing ADH, so nothing is binding to this ADH receptor, therefore there are no aquaporins in the kidney or in the nephron, and we are decreasing the amount of water that's reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. Again, this is a little diagram that summarizes everything. So how the stimulus of increasing water levels produces a response to decrease reabsorption, and therefore decreasing water levels, counteracting that stimulus. So I want you to know how our bodies regulate water when we have an increase in water or a decrease in water. and the different receptors that pick it up, the modulators, the effectors that produce a response, and how this response counteracts that stimulus. So as usual, please write down any questions that you have and bring them to class, and I will see you there.